This one's for anyone who feels nervous talking with somebody about buying their house and they are trying to do a wholesale deal, meaning you're not going to actually buy the house. You're going to pass it off to an investor that gives you a finder's fee. This episode, our guest, Steve Howell, started doing his first deal in 2009 and has done hundreds of deals. He talks about what he learns doing his first 100 deals back between 2009 and 2011 when he finally did quit his job working in a call center for Fidelity Investments. This is the podcast where we focus on teaching you the proven business model of wholesaling real estate, a strategy where you can make a big check by finding a rundown house and passing it to an investor. And I'm happy to say I've personally helped people close their very first deal 10,000 times in all 50 states with the software platform DealMachine over the last 7 years. And my co-host Ryan's got a little experience too. Why don't you tell us about that, Ryan?
Yeah, thank you very much. First off, we started back in 2019 as part of a 30-day wholesaling challenge. It took us 14 days to get our first deal under contract and assigned, making $8,500 on our first deal. And from that point on, never looking back, getting out of the 9-to-5 and going on to do over 400 wholesale deals.
So we've got some experience we're going to bring to you on this podcast to get you out of the position where you're at now and to where you want to be. Today, we've got Steve Howell, who's actually been wholesaling real estate since 2009. So walk me through, Steve, how much did you make on that first deal?
First deal was a whopping $2,500.
That's crazy for a first deal.
Yeah.
Where was that?
So at the time, I was working at a financial institution, Fidelity Investments, right in northern Kentucky, so basically the Cincinnati area. So it was a northern Kentucky deal.
Okay, wow. That's pretty crazy. So in northern Kentucky, how did you find a seller that wanted to sell their house for such a big discount that you could make $25,000 for assigning it to an investor?
Yeah, and actually, David, that very first one was a $2,500 deal. So it was a smaller deal. It was from Bandit Signs. So I kind of started cutting my teeth in real estate. My wife and I, who was my girlfriend at the time, then fiance, we were both working at this financial institution, and we bought one of the late night infomercial courses with a friend. And so we were out there putting a lot of spaghetti on the wall, so to speak. And so that very first deal was a Bandit Sign deal.
Oh, okay, got it. Well, hey, not to discredit the $2,500 deal. I must have heard 1,000. And I think $2,500 is definitely more along the lines of what we hear people doing on their first deal. So it's really good to get that layup in and proof of concept. So is that kind of what happened with you?
Yeah, it was definitely a proof of concept. Okay, believability, making getting that first deal in for sure. So yeah.
When they called you from the Bandit Sign, what did they have to say?
Yeah. It was an inherited situation. So they inherited this property. It had been lived in for quite some time, and they were just looking to be done with it. So it was kind of an inherited situation.
Oh, wow. Okay. So did you go see it?
I did. Yeah. Went out, scheduled the appointment, went out, met with her, and saw it, and then got it under contract basically a couple of days later, and ended up assigning it to another buyer in my market at that time. So
okay, how'd you come up with your offer?
Yeah, back then it was just kind of following the old 70% rule, doing that type of thing. So it was the first few offers were quite interesting, not really knowing what I'm doing, just kind of getting out there. So yeah.
How do you think they chose to sell it to you rather than list it on the market, which is what most people do when they want to sell their house, whether it be inherited or not?
Yeah, great question. I think it was the empathy and just chatting with her, being, trying to be a real person, connect with her, what she was going through. She had a sibling, so just kind of walking through the different challenges they faced. There was a lot of stuff in the property, and so that I think was one of the things for sure.
It wasn't ready to be listed on the market. They needed to do some cleanup first, and then they got to avoid that by going through you.
Exactly.
All right. were you nervous to get the house under contract, assuming you knew going in, you personally did not want to buy this house?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The nerves were there. Like, what in the world? I was following the process. We were talking with realtors. We were, putting out bandit signs, putting out Craigslist ads, kind of doing all sorts of little stuff, doing lots of cold calling. So I was trying to follow a process. This was 2009, putting a lot of spaghetti on the wall, and I was very nervous. Absolutely.
How did you continue to act when you felt nervous? Like, how did you get that done, even though you felt nervous?
Oh, good question. So, I mean, it almost sounds cheesy, but just, acting like it's a relative of just like, I want to do right by this person. And so like, I'm trusting in this process that I'm learning, and I'm going to do everything in my power to get this done. So just continuing to kind of act in spite of those nerves and inner feelings, just knowing that it's possible. But yeah, the nerves were there. And so as that first one hit, the proof of concept, definitely, started to ring true. So,
okay. Well, once you had it under contract, the only way to relieve those nerves was to get that buyer. So where did you go to find a buyer who ultimately did buy the property and paid you that $2,500 assignment fee?
Yeah. So this was one where I tapped in another local investor in my market that came in, and he got a heck of a deal. I probably left a lot of meat on the bone looking back at that very first deal. So it was almost like a JV, like, let me serve up somebody who I know is doing a lot of business. And so that was the first one for sure.
Got it. Okay. So you found, okay. So you JV'd with them. What is that what you said? You JV'd with them. So they found the buyer?
Yeah, they were another they like bought and held, but they also worked with a ton of other buyers. So this is one I think they ended up passing to another one of their buyers, but they also bought and hold quite a bit as well.
Okay, that's nice. If you guys like want to JV with somebody in your market, like you might meet them at a local meetup, or you Google "sell my house fast" and you see the top people who come up. Ryan, our co-host, actually has a JV agreement for you guys at DealMachine.com/JV. So, Steve, I guess the assignment fee was like $5,000, but you probably split that 50% with the wholesaler that you JV'd with. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Nice. It's a good move, because then you actually get to get that deal done, and you learn a whole lot, right? So that helps overcome any lack of confidence, that I certainly experienced doing my first deal as well. So smart move on that.
Yeah.
2009 though. So like, what's your average assignment fee now, would you say?
Yeah, it's typically around $15,000 now.
Got it. And you're still in that Kentucky market?
So I'm actually in the Dayton, Ohio market. So I'm about an hour north of Cincinnati. So I'm about essentially an hour from Columbus, an hour from Cincy, an hour and a half, 2 hours from Indy.
Oh, nice. Okay, cool. Yeah, I spent a lot of time in Indianapolis, 7 years, and that's where I do all my investing. So I really like that Midwest market. It does seem like a lot of those deals would be like $15,000 type assignments in the Midwest as well. In Indianapolis is what I see.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, things started getting traction in 2011. So this at the time I was working a full-time job. I was enrolling people into 401ks, got my Series 7 and 63 investment license. And I connected through a RIA meeting with a couple of brothers that I was maybe 24 at the time. They were 30, but had been doing real estate since they were 18. And they own like about 160 units and were flipping a couple dozen properties a year. And I'm like, man, I got to connect with these guys. So over the course of 12 months, we kind of formed a relationship. They saw my hustle, my tenacity kind of going out there, putting a lot of spaghetti on the wall. And I remember that first deal, it was an inherited property. And I'm like, man, I need to do something a little bit different than just what everybody else is doing. And so I started to kind of get this hunch that maybe there's something here with probates or inherited properties. And so long story short, I kind of decided to make that a niche to focus on. And then I kind of came under their wing for a couple years, left Fidelity Investments, and they said, hey, let's kind of have you run our acquisitions in the Columbus market. So my first 50 to 100 deals from 2011 to 2013 were, I never went and saw a single property. They were all in Columbus. I was still living in Northern Kentucky. And we kind of built out this probate system and also did a lot of cold calling, direct mail, stuff like that. And that's when I really started to learn the business. So anyways, just to add a little context of like, okay, that was 2009. Kind of when things started ramping up was 2011 when I left a Fortune 500 job and went to do, and that was the same year I got married too. So it was a lot going on in life, but definitely a cool journey. So
I like that you say casually your first 100 deals. A lot of the people that I get to speak with, they're doing 5, and it's really awesome to hear you say that so casually, because it tells me and others like how possible it really is to expand this business and turn it into something that can truly change your life if you're still working that 9-to-5 job right now.
Absolutely.
Hey guys, if you know you want to quit your job in the next 3 months, make sure you're subscribed to this podcast, because we've got some incredible frameworks with step-by-step instruction that you're not going to want to miss. Also, leave us a rating and review to let us know your favorite parts and why you want to get financial freedom.
How do you
So,
think
Ryan,
that those relationships or the experience that you had in your 9-to-5 transferred over into the wholesaling? Because you had that's kind of a...
Yeah, what were you doing in 2000, before 2009?
Yeah, so 2007 to 2011, I was at Fidelity Investments, essentially call center, but I was enrolling people into their 401ks and all that stuff, and then I kind of was in charge of asset retention. So if somebody's rolling couple $1 million out to Schwab or one of the other competitors, I'm on the phone. So that taught me a lot of things. As you guys know, the market crashed, hard in 2008. And so I remember that little red light on the phone just going crazy, and people coming in and losing so much. And so that taught me so many phone skills, so much empathy, high call volume, so many things, and just going through that rigorous process of getting the investment license. So it definitely, Ryan, that's a great question. It definitely helped translate some of those real estate skills that I used later on in my career for sure.
What do you think the biggest hurdle is when you're first having a conversation with somebody about selling their house? What do you think the biggest hurdle is?
Yeah, I think a lot of times it can be between our own, 2 ears of like, man, I'm going to put my foot in my mouth. I'm going to sound like an idiot. They're going to be like, man, you don't know what you're talking about. So just that confidence, I think is one of the biggest things of like, okay, what happens if they throw this curveball question, or, I end up saying something, ridiculous and they see through that I haven't, done a million deals and all these things in the beginning. I think that's just that inner self-dialogue can be, a hard part of something to overcome in the beginning for sure.
Do you have a recommendation if somebody's in that position where they're nervous, maybe they're on the verge of having to make their first offer? Do you have any input on how to get over that?
Yeah, I think, making sure that you are following a process, right? There's a lot of processes nowadays to follow, but caring about the person, like, you shouldn't be trying to twist someone's arm, change their mind about something. It's okay if we're not a good fit and, they're better served by listing their house, or, they're better served by just fixing it up and handling that or keeping it as a rental. And so just having some questions to kind of get an idea of where they're at, what's that process been like for them, what's stressing them out, in their mind, what does a win look like? And, just asking some of those diagnosis questions and, not being like, okay, every deal I have to be the person. It's like just understanding kind of where they're at. So I think that kind of takes some pressure off. And, as that pressure comes off, you can have a little bit more of that natural conversation. But still, having that process to follow of, qualifying the property and all of those things too.
Yeah.
Right.
Being prepared, I think, is such a important thing. You can't just call and not know a direction. You need to know how you're going to come up with an offer. You're going to need to know how to have that conversation, how to at least say the right things, and even being prepared to be rejected, like knowing how to overcome. And David, I don't know what episode it was, but when we had Jenny Hudspeth on talking about overcoming objections, you need to be prepared for that, because that is going to be something that's going to happen, especially if you're just starting this process of wholesaling. You're going to get, in fact, if you're not getting an offer rejected, you're coming in too high. Like, that should be a part of the process, is just be prepared for them to say no. And what are you going to say next after they say no?
Exactly.
Episode 138 of the deal.
138. Yeah, that'd be a great
objections handled for you. Steve, I know that you help a lot of people get started wholesaling, and people listening may often have that negative self-talk like, man, I don't know if this is for me. I don't know if I can achieve this. I'm curious, do you, Steve, do you have any type of vetting process at who you'll actually mentor? In other words, do you think anyone on the earth can do this, or are there certain things that would allow someone to achieve success in this business or not?
Yeah, that's an awesome question, David. So, I've worked with a lot of people over the last decade. So I started working with people in kind of 2014, like, Steven, how are you doing these like larger spread, like inherited property deals? Like, would you help me with my first couple? So it just kind of started like onesie twosies, working with a few people. And then, over the last 10 years or so, and I've worked with a lot of people that, like, maybe they've had an accent, they've been more introverted, and, just kind of taking them through the process. So I do think that anyone can do this, but there are a lot of people that meet that resistance, or who don't want to do the work, or won't follow through, or be consistent. But I've seen people that have had crazy thick accents, been an extreme introvert, have failed at other sales roles, still come in, and they might not be doing 10 deals a month, but maybe they are doing a larger spread deal a quarter, and that's a massive blessing for their family. So, I definitely like to talk with every person live, just to, see what their goals are, and really be very transparent about what can be realistic, and to kind of try to gauge if they're going to put that work in, or if, that type of thing. So that's kind of how I approach that, for sure.
Got it. How do you gauge if they're going to put the work in?
Yeah, that's a hard thing. That's a hard thing. Yeah. Questions and more questions, for sure.
Yeah. A lot of times people will say, I'm not motivated. Can you help me get motivated? And then the thing I say back is like, it's okay if you're not motivated. It just means you don't want it bad enough. Maybe someday you will. And then most people are like, fuck.
That is true. That is true.
That's cool. Well, what are your goals for the wholesaling real estate side of your business? What do you think, and where do you see that going?
Yeah, so I've always kept a smaller operation. I have a couple of VAs here, and we'll do a handful of deals a month. And so, and then half my time I spend working kind of one-on-one with clients. And so, my wife and I are in our late 30s, and we want to start taking down some more rentals and kind of cherry picking those. So, for us, we're kind of focusing. My two favorite lead sources have always been driving for dollars and probates. So I love that component, but continuing to put a little bit more into direct mail, SEO, those type of things, and then start holding on to some more properties. So that's a goal right now, presently, for us. So,
got it. How many properties do you think you want to get up to?
Yeah, so right now I kind of like the modest approach, like so acquiring 2 to 3 a year. So if we're wholesaling 40, 50, if I can pick 2 or 3 really good ones, that's kind of our comfort level at the present time.
That'd be sick. Yeah. Ryan, how many rentals do you have?
53.
Cool.
I've got 19 myself. So we've all got a goal to continue building that rental portfolio. So I can certainly appreciate that. You get the appreciation doing nothing, right? And then you also do get some cash flow if you're buying it that way. So I love that. And guys, I think you should check out StephenHowellMentoring.com if you want to know more about Stephen. Any final thoughts that you'd like to leave us with, Steve?
Yeah. Just, I love what you guys put out, and, DealMachine has been awesome. So man, I just got to give you guys props. Like seriously, the new features that have been rolling out, the 10,000 records. I mean, it's been incredible. So, I don't think there's any better way to get a larger spread deal than driving for dollars and utilizing DealMachine. So, just putting in the work is my biggest thing.
Oh, thanks for mentioning that. So you're talking about the unlimited contact info. Basically, you see all the owners' phone numbers, income level, emails, and you could export up to 10,000 of those, right? You see unlimited in the app. So I'm glad you're getting use out of that.
Absolutely. It's been awesome.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much. And again, if you want to check out those seller objections that we mentioned earlier, it's episode 138 of the DealMachine podcast, and we'll see you guys on the next episode.
Thanks for listening to the DealMachine Real Estate Investing Podcast. Please leave us a review and follow along wherever you're listening to your podcast.